Big Bet, what's up with it, YouTube? How y'all doing, man? Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Y'all already know who it is, and if you don't, it's Off World Reactions coming at you with another reaction video. And this one is from, I think, Father Moses, if I'm not mistaken, talking about modern men and their feminine way of thinking.
I need a bitch to ride for me to die.
Of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. I was speaking with one of my spiritual sons about ideas, about videos, and he said, what about consistent themes that you hear in confession? Is there something that you hear that happens in confession that you would say pertains to a lot of people, things that people are struggling with, etc., etc.? And I realized everyone's confessing very similar things. I mean, you have the 7 deadly sins and all the variations on that. So a lot of confession is I would actually say shaped more by the person or the gender, male or female, who's giving the confession, rather than it is by any particular sins that are kind of dominant. Everyone struggles with the same things. A lot of times the confession, it's how they express it, which led me to share with him this point. What I'm finding or seeing a lot in confession is that a lot of times it's the men that are under 30 over the last few years that I find they actually have very feminine thought processes.
Really?
This is both what I've experienced in confession and talking with younger men and hearing the way that they think about things. Now, the Holy Fathers tell us don't trust our own thoughts. So it's important that we reveal our thoughts. But in the process of people revealing their thoughts and talking about it, you realize, wow, there is a very strong feminine way of thinking that I think is actually kind of been adopted by this younger generation of men.
No, it's not adopted. It's been taught. It's been bred into them because of the fact that we don't have fathers being at home for all of the reasons. All of the reasons. The fathers are not in the homes. And when the father's not in the home, that little boy is only seeing how his mama moves and how his mama acts. Yeah, she can teach him what she thinks a man should be, yeah, of course. But he's watching what you do. He's watching how you move. And that's why it's important to have a man in the house, is because when a man is in the house, he's gonna move more like a man. Now, I'm not saying that the man, whatever man you have in the house is gonna be adequate. Sometimes they can't act right. They don't act right. You feel me? And when they don't act right, your son is gonna mimic exactly what he's doing. That's just what it is. That's what kids do. Like the little girls is looking at their mama. They looking at their mama. How is my mama acting? If mama was in the streets, daughter gonna be right behind her. Like, that's just what it is.
Now, as I spoke about in a previous video, there's nothing wrong with the way that women think. Women
Not at all.
see life through a kaleidoscope of information. Mental, emotional, interpersonal. They have great insights. They just need it balanced with a husband or spiritual father that can help them navigate through the pitfalls and find the right conclusion.
Exactly.
Likewise, in a marriage, a husband desperately needs the insights from his wife, because his wife is going to have very important key insights into the emotional framework, the personality traits of the children, how they need to be communicated to. So the husband and the wife in these two different ways of thinking are completely complementary. There's nothing deficient in women's thinking versus men's thinking, right?
Like, literally, it takes both of y'all. It takes both the man and the woman to come together and make it work. It's not the man by himself. It's not the woman by herself. They come together. Like, once we get that way of thinking, I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot less people alone. Now, there are more women than men in this world. So, I mean, it is what it is. But for the most part, we're going to see less lonely women if they can grasp that concept of the fact that it's both of y'all, not one or the other. Like, for real, for real.
Right? Both of them have deficiencies. What I mean is there's a certain way that women process information that is really unique to them, but I'm finding I see it a lot more today in young men. What are those things? Well, number one, the tendency to focus on too many possibilities. Women often suffer from paralysis by analysis. They see so many possibilities of what could happen that they often are unable to navigate through what are less likely scenarios or less beneficial scenarios and more beneficial scenarios. They tend to see a kind of kaleidoscope of information. I see this with men. They start to be unable to kind of differentiate what is valuable information and what is invaluable information, and they begin to kind of take it in almost like a computer where they're just taking an overload of information that they don't know what to do with or even how to process it. Number two, women tend to look for perfect answers. Most women I've encountered are perfectionists. It seems to be something kind of almost inevitable with women. Maybe this is North American women in particular, but they love the idea of making the perfect decision.
Yeah.
Again, perfect decisions don't exist, right?
On top of that, my bad, I didn't mean to cut you off, Father. But on top of that, if you look at how most men that are business minded, right? They're gonna see an opportunity to be like, I'm jumping on it. It's the wife that comes in and says, hold on, let's make sure that we look at it all the way through. Like that, you know what I'm saying? Work hand in hand. Once he take that opportunity and he's midway in, he's seeing how he can make the money, but he's not making the money. That's when the wife comes in and says, well, let's look at what you're doing. It's not because one is smarter than the other. No, we just think differently. We move differently. And when we come together as a unit, that's like the perfect human being right there. Once we come together. Now we have individual flaws, but when we're together, we're perfect. That's how it's supposed to be. If we keep that mindset, it's gonna be a lot less unhappy marriages. Y'all married each other for a reason. Sometimes it's flawed and yeah, y'all need to leave each other alone. But for the most part, y'all married each other for a reason. So when you keep that reasoning and you use that for everything that y'all get into, I mean, I think it'll shed a more positive light on you. You know what I mean?
Right? We make the best possible decisions with the limited amount of information that we have, and then we move forward. So that's number two. Number three, they make their decisions based on the fear of failure instead of the risk of reward. What is a frequent example of this? Women tend to marry men that are safe. Yeah. They tend to marry men that are safe because men that are safe don't challenge them. And when they do that, they oftentimes come back afterwards and have feelings of regret about who they married because the person is safe and consistent, but doesn't challenge them, doesn't exhibit much manly characteristics, it isn't very adventurous, and ultimately a lot of times women find these men very boring after a couple of years. What they once thought was safe has then become boring.
Like, women are raising their boys to be the men that they think that they want, and then when those boys grow up and they start dating other women, those women keep leaving them because that's not what they really want. It seems on the surface like, oh, he's perfect, but once you're with that man for a while, you start seeing the tendencies. You start seeing the fact that he's not really a man. He's just his mama with a penis. You feel me? That's when they start realizing, like, that's not what I want. I want a real man. Y'all have to stop raising y'all sons to be that man that you think is the perfect man. You got to stop doing that. You got to get that boy to his father. Give him to his father. Let his father teach him. Let his father grow him up into a man. Because a woman cannot do it. No matter how hard they try, no matter what they do, they cannot do it. And if he can't be with his father, try to get him around coaches. Try to see if there's teachers that he's kind of close to. Now, make sure that you're always protecting your child, but at the same time, they need positive male role models because they're going to end up like you, and all the women that you see run in and out your house is never going to treat him like a real man because of how you raised him. That's just the reality of it.
Men tend to make decisions based on the risk to reward. This is why we have a history of men going to war, sailing the seas, exploring North America, doing all of these things, because men think about the reward and the possibility of what could happen rather than the fear of failing. what I'm seeing with young men today is that there's a type of neuroticism in their thinking where they second guess themselves all the time. They see so many possibilities. They're afraid of failing. They don't think of the risk to reward ratio. They kind of act in a more timid way about life. They're not going after it. They're not trying to conquer life. Instead, they oftentimes feel that they are being conquered by life. And so when I see this and when I talk to men and they begin to reveal these thoughts and these patterns of thinking, there's a couple things that I know are kind of feeding into this. Number one, life is not a simulation. Life is not a video game. Life is happening in real time, and there's no pauses or do-overs. This means that you are going to make perpetual, decisions that are not the best. Why? Because we have that saying, hindsight is 20/20. You're constantly making decisions based on limited information. The reality is that when you build confidence based on failure. The most confident people are the people who have failed the most, not the people who've been the most successful. The people who have failed the most have learned from their mistakes and decisions, the things that they would do different, and they continue to build on them. That's one of the hallmarks of being a man, is overcoming adversity and being okay with looking bad, with being a failure, with falling short. You often see this with entrepreneurs, and they'll say, I had 4 businesses go bankrupt.
Oh my gosh.
I had, 15 great ideas, but I didn't make any money until the 16th. And so it is that you often find that this kind of daring, this fight that has to take place for success and for confidence is a very manly attribute, but it's based on failure. And so if somebody meets a man who's very confident and you hear their story, I guarantee you their story contains lots of failures, lots of missteps, lots of things that they would do different. But in the face of adversity, they've learned to overcome it. And that's what built their confidence.
And another staple of being a man is staying true to your foundation. You don't let people sway you. Swaying meaning you don't let nobody get you away from your purpose, your foundation, without you fully accepting it and wanting that change. You feel me? If you see that you can do something better, by all means. We're human. We're meant to keep learning. We don't ever stop learning. That's when you are stupid. When you stop learning and refuse to learn, that's when you're stupid. But if you just keep learning, you're human. If you stick to that foundation and you don't let people sway you when you don't want to, that's how you I feel like that's one of the definitions of being a man. You know what I'm saying? Just staying true to yourself, for real. Y'all did.
Because if you think that life is like dominoes and everything's going to fall in your favor and everything's going to work out, you're not going to make it very far. That is not the nature of life and of existence. Number 2, men make decisions today that tell them one thing that is incongruent with their mind. What do I mean by that? Men often look at internet videos of other men being intimate with women that they cannot get. So 2 major problems. Number 1 is they're looking at another man's genitalia. This is bizarre. And every man, I think, knows that this is weird to do that. Number 2, men are looking at women that they can't get. And so the illusion of the internet content is that you're a winner, and yet every man who comes to me when they've committed this sin says, I feel like a failure. So if you make decisions that enforce the fact that you're a loser, that you're a failure, that you're looking at other men, that you can't get women, guess what? This is going to severely undermine your ability to see yourself as the protagonist in the story of your life, making decisions, conquering foes, and overcoming adversity. What you're going to be constantly putting in your mind is, I am a loser, I am pathetic. If you constantly feed yourself with the thought that you are a loser, that you're pathetic, and that you're doing things that you don't want to do, you are never going to have the confidence of a man to make decisions and move forward and trust in God.
Yeah.
That's number 3. In an earthly relationship, it is totally necessary for me as a father with my 10-year-old son to get him up in the morning, tell him to brush his teeth, make his bed, clean up his room, wash his face, brush his teeth, do his prayers. That is completely normal, okay? If he is 20 years old and I am calling him up in the morning and saying, son, you've got to get out of bed, you've got to do your prayers, you've got to brush your teeth, that is pathetic, okay? We have a relationship with God the Father where he is our Father and he expects us to act like men. He has a secret, hidden will. We call it the will of God. It is hidden from us. We are not going to figure it out. We are not going to shake a magical jar. All the people who go, oh, I prayed and I felt like God was telling me, is nonsense. When people talk like that, they always say that God agrees with whatever their inclination is. It's like God never tells them to do anything they don't want to do. It's nonsense.
It's crazy.
Be a mature adult man means living in a relationship with God where you trust in his secret holy will and you constantly are praying for him to bless you and to bless your life. That is what you're asking for. But as far as decision making goes, he expects you to be an adult man. When my son is 25 years old and he says, Dad, what should I do? I can say, listen, son, here is my wisdom. This is what I think. But ultimately, he's got to make the decisions.
That's a man.
He's got to figure it out. I'm not going to tell him every time, oh, you must do this or you should do this or whatever else. Right? That's our relationship with God. We have to live and move and act in a way that honors God. What do I mean by that? We need to keep to his moral will, meaning that we're not dishonest. We don't lie. We don't cheat. We don't steal. We don't manipulate people.
Yeah.
We're not passive aggressive. We're not pathetic. We live within his moral will, and then we make the decisions that we need to do in life.
Like, it literally all comes down to just being a decent person. You ain't got to be the best. You ain't got to be the most virtuous, the most generous, the most whatever. You don't have to be that. You just have to be a decent person. That's the bare bones of it. That's the bare minimum. It's just being a decent person. If you have the inclination, if you have those intrusive thoughts and they're telling you to go do some crazy shit, all you gotta do is stay inside. Hey, today the day for me to stay inside. I know I'm gonna go off on somebody. I'm just gonna stay inside today. If that's what it takes, sometimes that's what you gotta do. But just being a good person, being a decent person can take you so far and it can do so much for the people around you. It's crazy. We got so many people that's just rubbing all that negative energy off onto other people, and then it just spreads out like wildfire. And then when you have those people that do good and they give good vibes to people, it spreads like a wildfire. But the problem is the emotion for the negative emotions can be stronger than the good emotions and the positive emotions. So that wildfire is taking over the good one. You feel me? Like, we just got to spread that good shit. You know what I'm saying? We just got to be good people. It's not hard.
Men, young men especially, need to cultivate their thinking around being successful, realizing that life is full of tons of uncertainty. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have failures.
100%.
They're going to have to trust in God, and they're going to have to walk forward with maturity and follow their best sense and the best advice that they can get from other men, and to follow this through and realize that this is why life is a journey and everything isn't laid out at your feet, ready to go. And you have to fight for it. You have to work for it. And that is part of being a man. God bless you.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Like, we're gonna face failure. Like, it's no ifs, ands, buts about it. You're gonna fail a lot. You're gonna fail a lot. The question is, what are you gonna do with the failure? You gonna learn from it? Or you just gonna keep doing the same thing, practicing insanity, thinking that something's gonna change? Up to you. But y'all have a good one. I appreciate y'all watching the video with me.